Greetings, fellow gamers. I'm the Soulsborne Seeker, and today I'll be reviewing Tomba Special Edition, a colorful Metroidvania game developed by Whoopee Camp and initially released in 1997 for the PlayStation before being re-released by Limited Run Games on the 1st of August 2024 as an enhanced edition of the title for PC, Nintendo Switch, as well as the PS4 and PS5. Me and Tomba, or Tombi as it was known in Europe, go way back, with my younger self having spent countless hours playing its demo on the PlayStation before managing to gather enough allowance money to purchase a copy. That being said, as much as I loved it, its elevated difficulty didn't allow me to complete it back in the day, something that always bugged me when the game would revisit my recollections from time to time. And so, imagine my surprise when I learned that a special edition of Tomba would be coming out in 2024, giving me a second chance at redemption, and after having spent several hours with it, I'm glad to finally scratch that goal from my nostalgia bucket list. Now, the question that remains is, does Tomba hold up in today's reality, or did my young mind back then and nostalgia goggles later on build it up to be something more than it actually was? Let's jump into the review and find out. The game transpires on an uncharted archipelago that has fallen victim to a malicious group known as the Seven Evil Pigs, who have tainted the land and terrorized its citizens for years with their malevolent magic and army of anthropomorphic swine known as Coma Pigs. We follow the adventures of the titular Tomba, a wild boy that has a precious bracelet stolen from him by the Coma Pigs and goes on the hunt to retrieve it, in the process meeting a large cast of odd and wondrous characters, friends and foes alike. Needless to say, the narrative is fairly straightforward in a charming way and simply acts as a launchpad for you to explore the game's vibrant open world. In my humble opinion, the land of Tomba is one of the most entertaining and bizarre places I have ever traveled across. There's a good number of diverse biomes that you will be called to explore, from colorful villages to windy mountains, all the way to lava caverns and a haunted mansion, just to name a few, all of them filled to the brim with some of the weirdest and most obscure secrets and quests that I have ever seen in a game, something I will expand upon in a moment. The map of Tomba is divided in layers, meaning it allows traversal both in side-scroller fashion as well as in depth, which sets the tone for some interesting exploration and secret discovery without ever coming across as overwhelming. It's really hard for me to stress how ahead of its time this open world was, with every aspect of it holding meaning and every nook and cranny potentially hiding some weird item, character, or strange locale, most of which usually end up initiating an event for you, which leads us to one of the core ingredients of Tomba. Almost all of your time in the game will be spent trying to solve events that will keep popping up for you, which is essentially the title's equivalent to quests. This particular element is perhaps what Tomba is best known for, something that I mainly attribute to the weirdly esoteric nature of a lot of these missions. Essentially, you don't really get any guidance when acquiring an event, but rather a vague statement of what you are supposed to do, and it is up to your memory, perception, and observation skills to figure out how to solve them. As a matter of fact, lack of guidance is one of the main things this game goes for, and also one of the two deciding factors why I consider it to be quite challenging to complete. On a very basic level, event completion is all about a combination of talking to the right NPCs or finding the right points of interest, with you then having to find and use certain items on the aforementioned NPCs and points of interest for interesting things to happen, a process that can range from incredibly obvious to bafflingly bizarre, with certain events being very easy to complete while others making very little sense. The majority of said events are optional and not necessary for game completion, though the ones you do need to finish in order to complete Tomba follow for the most part the same mentality of item seeking and appropriate usage. Completing events grants you ability points, which sort of function like the game's currency by having you barred from accessing certain areas or being unable to have meaningful conversations with some NPCs unless you have acquired the appropriate number, though in all honesty I never felt restricted by this and had consistently already gathered the necessary points by the time I came across such situations. This event completion process is more or less what the game's exploration is built around, and also what makes said exploration so exciting since you never truly know what you're going to find next, which keeps things fresh and engaging. On that note, and with Tomba actually being a Metroidvania, said exploration is complemented by the need to acquire new abilities that will open up new paths for you, some of which you learn, such as swimming, while others you need certain items to bring forth, such as using a parasol to glide across the air. By now it should be quite quite evident that item management and usage is of paramount importance here, and this is where one of the main negatives of the game comes into play. Every single item you gather is added to a list you can access via the game's menu. The problem here is that item management is almost non-existent and mostly happens by item type, which means that after having gathered tens of these items, it can be a nuisance to scroll through the different pages in order to find the one you want. This becomes painfully evident when it comes to equipable items, some of which you will have to unequip to get rid of their effects, such as the aforementioned parasol, instead of incorporating some sort of quick slot for said ability. Staying a bit on exploration, Tomba features a total of 3 different ways to move around the map, starting with some special keys that immediately teleport you to their owners, before giving you some consumable feathers that allow you to choose where you want to go from the places you have discovered, all the way to an amazing flying dog who does the same but doesn't run the risk of being depleted like the feathers do. On that note, I do wish to point out that the overview map itself is not particularly helpful and quite clunky to use in order to determine exactly where you are, though it is pleasant to the eyes with all its diverse hues. Finally, exploration is complemented by the existence of treasure chests you can find and open in order to acquire different items as well as health upgrades, though in terms of said health upgrades, I found it odd that while your health increase caps at 8 points, you are still able to find health fragments that unfortunately bear no meaning to you aside from getting an achievement. In terms of platforming, that is the second aspect of the game that adds to its difficulty in an unintentional way. Platforming in Tomba is quite freeing, since you can make high jumps and climb on walls from early on, but at the same time it's incredibly clunky and will make you feel like you are controlling an ice cube instead of an actual person. You will frequently find yourself slipping off platforming ledges without meaning to, especially in situations where your target platform has rounded edges, though thankfully, Tomba mostly grabs himself from said ledges when that happens, so you won't always meet an untimely end, which is quite possible given that the game features insta-death pits that don't pair well with janky movement. There's an especially frustrating segment in the windy mountain region that accentuates this problem by truly making you feel like a piece of paper at the mercy of the drafts, which was probably my least favorite part of the game. On combat, Tomba does feature a limited range of armaments for you to take down your enemies with, though nothing truly impressive. Basically, you will be able to find a few different ranged weapons of gradually increasing damage output in the form of boomerangs made of different material, as well as 3 different optional elemental gems after you have leveled up certain attack aspects of your character by defeating different types of foes, though by far my favorite and most fun attack is the bite from above. Essentially, you can jump on top of your enemies to grab hold of them with your hands and teeth, and then fling them in the direction of your choice to hit other enemies or environmental items, an attack that never got old. Defeating enemies also provides ability points, so they are another source of this currency aside from events. Boss-wise, I was both entertained and underwhelmed by the big bads I got to fight in Tomba. Even though each one of the evil pigs has its own attack patterns and arena design, they all have the same way of being defeated, which is to grab them and toss them in a rotating bag by timing your throw correctly. While this was actually fun to do, I would have liked a bit more of a battle necessity here, maybe to weaken the pigs before being able to throw them in the bags, since, as things stand, I was able to capture one of the pigs in less than a minute after immediately grabbing him and timing my throw perfectly. That being said, perhaps the most exciting aspect of these boss fights is the fact that you actually feel a sense of accomplishment and progression once you have beaten them, since each boss captured results in an area of the world being purified of their magic, providing hard proof of your achievement. When it comes to default difficulty, I'd situate Tomba to the hard side of things, courtesy of the aforementioned limited guidance, which can result in you traveling left and right while trying to figure out where to go next, as well as the clunkiness of the platforming, which can lead you to death frequently. That being said, the special edition of the game actually provides some things that mitigate the latter issue, so let's talk a bit about what this version of the game brings to the table and also what it lacks. Perhaps the 2 most important elements introduced in the special edition of the game are the ability to rewind time in order to redo a section, which I never used, as well as the ability to save wherever and whenever you like, which I used all the time. That pretty much means that you can immediately save before attempting a challenging acrobatic segment and, if things go south, reload and try again, which also spares you your lives, one of which you lose whenever you die. Extra content featured in this edition includes a remastered soundtrack, which I adore, many different nostalgia offerings, such as the original advertisements and artwork of the game, as well as some awesome small video documentaries and interviews. The thing that became quite noticeable by its absence, however, was a lack of widescreen support. Even though there was a small upgrade in the resolution as far as I could see, there is no option to go widescreen, meaning you will have to play with two bars on either side to emulate the initial aspect ratio, which I thought was truly a missed opportunity. I also came across a bug in one specific area where the music would suddenly stop playing, which was a bit jarring. As for length, it took me a bit over 10 hours to finish the game while having completed 109 out of its 130 events, with an estimated additional couple of hours to complete all of them. On that note, I do feel the need to point out that Tomba features a few missable events that can force you to replay it for 100%, something I never enjoyed in a game. For a price of about $20, I consider Tomba Special Edition to be a bit on the expensive side of things, but still a worthwhile purchase that allows old and new players to visit or revisit a 90s classic with all the good and bad this entails. In conclusion, Tomba Special Edition was a wonderfully nostalgic experience for me, and one that proved that the game withstood the test of time in surprising capacity. I loved the exploration of its world, I adored its absurd characters and wacky vibe, I enjoyed the boss fights and the sense of accomplishment that followed their defeat, and found its lack of guidance to be a welcome challenge. Item management could have used more work to be more efficient, as could the overview map. The clunkiness can be frustrating at times when it comes to platforming. The boss fights could have used an extra layer of challenge, some of the events could have been less obscure in their solution, and I think widescreen support should have been a given, but the game still managed to impress me with how well it held up over the past 28 years. Tomba Special Edition is by no means perfect, rather it is definitely a flawed experience, but if you're willing to look past its rough edges, you'll be rewarded with one of the most densely packed and unique adventures you've ever experienced in a Metroidvania game. My final verdict on Tomba Special Edition is 8 out of 10. What did you think about Tomba Special Edition? Have you played it yet? Do you agree with the points I mentioned, or do you see things differently? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Soulsborne Seeker out.